You're watching Euronews now. I'm Takumbo Salako with your top stories. Ukraine and Russia are reportedly making progress over resuming desperately needed grain exports to help ease the global food crisis. Thousands of firefighters are battling a series of wildfires across southern Europe as the extreme heat wave threatens record temperatures. And 8 become 6 in a race to replace Boris Johnson as head of the UK Conservative Party and Prime Minister, with another round of voting tonight.
Few images, fewer details, but some optimism, at least for the United Nations, after a meeting held between Russia, Ukraine and Turkey to try and unblock the exports of Ukrainian grain trapped in the ports by the war. After the meeting, the UN Secretary-General did not hide his hope.
Today in Istanbul, we have seen a critical step forward to ensuring the safe and secure export of Ukrainian food products through the Black Sea. In a world darkened by global crisis, today at last we have a ray of hope.
Negotiations, also with the UN as an observer, will continue next week.
More technical work will now be needed to materialize today's progress, but the momentum is clear. In the end, the aim of all parties is not just an agreement between the Russian Federation and Ukraine, but an agreement for the world.
The war in Ukraine has fueled the global food crisis that followed 2 years of a global pandemic, as Ukraine is one of the world's leading grain exporters. No details have been given about what was discussed. Until now, Moscow demanded to inspect ships to verify that they were not carrying weapons to Ukraine. Kyiv demanded guarantees against a Russian attack if Ukraine removes the mines that protects its ports.
In addition to collecting evidence,
Ukraine's top war crimes prosecutor and judicial authorities across Europe are at The Hague, weighing in on how to bring perpetrators of war crimes to justice in Russia's war. The Netherlands is hosting the Ukraine Accountability Conference to work out the complex task of evidence sharing and prosecution strategy.
it is only with justice that we can help victims and their families. This is a gigantic task, not least because it requires the collection and storage of evidence in the midst of a war. It requires a strong, stable Ukrainian justice system, and it requires your support. But it is why we are here today.
It was these images from the small town of Bucha near Kyiv that shocked the world and revealed the extent of possible war crimes that could be taking place. Moscow denies involvement in any crimes and says it's conducting a special military operation. But Ukrainians say they are still finding bodies in former occupied villages outside the capital.
Russian airstrikes caused widespread destruction in Sloviansk. Several towns in the area saw a series of artillery and missile barrages in the last 24 hours. In Mykolaiv, at least 5 people were killed. Russian troops are thought likely to focus on several small Donbas towns during the coming week. Siviersk and Dolina are on the approach to Sloviansk, along with Kramatorsk.
Люди ближе, во-первых, стали. Вот там на нашем поселке, где я живу, сплоченнее люди друг другу стали. Держатся вместе, помогают друг другу. Даже те, которые раньше ссорились, спрашивают, чем может помочь.
The Russian Ministry of Defense is claiming Ukraine has suffered significant losses. Its spokesperson said high-precision air-launched missiles killed over 350 servicemen of the Ukrainian armed forces, and they captured, they said, 20 units of military equipment. Ukraine has dismissed the claims as propaganda. Meanwhile, its volunteer territorial defence unit's been taking part in military training exercises. With Russian sights on the east, Ukraine's troops are said to be preparing to reclaim captured territory in the south.
Following the adoption of European sanctions, long queues have started forming on both sides of the border between Lithuania and Russia, despite more than 300 lorries crossing the Regadash border checkpoint every day.
I waited for 10 days. I don't know why it took so long.
I waited for 4 days. They have started to check very thoroughly. Queues are also forming at the border between Lithuania and Kaliningrad. Officials say that after applying sanctions earlier this week, Lithuania denied 34 lorries.
We are executing a more thorough selection for customs checks, as we are taking into account the package of the sanctioned goods. The system assesses whether goods that are heading from the Kaliningrad region to Russia or the other way are included in the sanctions list. Therefore, the customs checks are longer.
After Lithuania imposed restrictions on the transit of metal products between Russia and its Kaliningrad exclave, the sanctions expanded to include other products such as cement and alcohol. Former UK Finance Minister Rishi Sunak and former Defence Minister Penny Mordaunt emerge as clear favourites to replace Boris Johnson at the head of the Tory party and therefore as Prime Minister. Sunak won 88 votes and Mordaunt took second place with 67. The first vote has also served to discard Nadhim Zahawi and Jeremy Hunt, who failed to reach the threshold of 30 votes by Conservative lawmakers needed to stay in the contest. They were knocked out of the race with 25 and 18 votes respectively.
32, Hunt 18.
The remaining 6 candidates will be able to take part in the next ballot on Thursday. The process to choose a new party leader should last till September.
Considerably less lethal than many other members.
Leader of the opposition Keir Starmer, who is better rated in the polls than all of Johnson's possible successors, tried without success to table a motion of no confidence in the government. For the time being, Johnson does not officially endorse any of the contenders to succeed him.
Today's vote on a stimulus package to help families cope with the effects of the energy crisis has to be seen as a political test for the current government. Now, in the past few weeks, we already reported on divisions that have emerged within the Five Star Movement that actually made Foreign Secretary Luigi Di Maio leave the movement. And we know that what now remains of the original political party is being represented and led by former Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte, who recently tabled a list of political demands to continue backing the current government and said that the movement is ready to quit the ruling coalition if Mario Draghi is not going to implement such measures. We know that there have been several meetings between the two over such demands, but Mario Draghi was also very clear when on Tuesday said that he's going to leave office if the Five Star Movement pulls out of his coalition. We'll find out later on today what the movement, what the Five Star Movement will decide to do, whether or not it will abstain from the vote. But we do know, that's according to a political analyst, is that if the stimulus package is not going to be approved, well, the current government will have to undergo a confidence vote in Parliament. But even if the stimulus package is going to be approved by a less strong majority than usual, well, clearly questions remain over how long the government will last for and what Mario Draghi's future decision will be after today's outcome. Giorgio Orlandi for Euronews in Rome.
Much more news and analysis still to come after this break.